Hi there, it's Jason Lamb, reporter with WTVF News Channel 5 in Nashville. You know, one of our jobs as reporters at MMJs is to write sentences that are clear, concise, and direct. One of the best ways to do that is to write sentences in active voice and not passive voice. Now, I understand a lot of people get confused when they hear those words. They get flashbacks to high school English class. Well, I'm here to clear all that up. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of grammar here at the beginning, but stay with me because then I'm going to talk about why this is so important to learn as a journalist. Now, I want to be clear, writing in active voice does not mean adding ing to all your verbs or getting rid of all your past tense verbs like ran or opened. In the simplest terms, when you're writing something in active voice, you're following a simple formula. It's a word order. You're telling us who does what in that order. Now, if you're a grammar nerd like me, an active sentence is a subject, that's the who, followed by a verb, that's the does, followed by an object, that's the what. Now don't worry if subject, verb, object makes your head kind of spin. For now, just focus on who does what. Now before we talk about why we should write this way as journalists, let's look at some examples. John kicks the ball. Who does what? In this sentence, John is the who, kicks is the does, the verb, and the ball is the what. Who does what? John kicks the ball. This sentence is written in active voice. Another example, someone wrecked the car. What word is the who in this case? Well, in this case, the who is the word someone. Even if we don't know exactly who that someone is, it's still our subject, our who in this sentence. Who does what? What's the does in this sentence? The does in this sentence is wrecked. Wrecked is our verb. And the what is the car. Who does what? Someone wrecked the car. Now, some of you may be saying, wait a minute, wrecked, I see those letters, ED at the end. Isn't wrecked passive? Okay, here comes the grammar nerd again. The verb wrecked is past tense. You see the ED at the end and know that verb is past tense. But just because a verb is past tense does not automatically make it passive voice. And here's the thing, a past tense verb in a news script is okay. It's okay to use a past tense verb if you're describing something that happened in the past. But the sentence, someone wrecked the car, is actually still active voice. How can you tell? If the sentence is in the form of who does what, someone wrecked the car, you know it's active voice, even if there's a verb in there that's past tense. So what then is passive voice? If active voice is who does what, then passive voice kind of flips that. What is done? And then sometimes, what is done by whom? Or for the grammar nerds, instead of subject, verb, object in active voice, it's object, verb, and then sometimes the subject in passive voice. Now let's look at our previous examples. Our active voice sentence, who does what, is John kicks the ball. In passive voice, what is done by whom, the sentence becomes the ball is kicked by John, or even just the ball is kicked. The sentences mean the same thing, but which of these two sentences is the clearest and the shortest? John kicks the ball. Our other example, active voice, who does what? Someone wrecked the car. In passive voice, what is done? The car was wrecked. Now here's why I don't like to use passive voice when I write. That passive sentence, the car was wrecked. Here's my question. From that sentence, tell me, who wrecked the car? Well, guess what? we don't know. When a sentence is written in passive voice, it oftentimes hides the who. We as journalists should always be transparent and provide as much information as possible, and active voice helps us do that. Even if we don't know who wrecked the car, we can at least say someone wrecked the car rather than hiding it and just saying the car was wrecked. Now here's another example. You'll often see this in press releases from a police department. At 15:30 hours, shots were fired. What is done? Shots were fired. Well, who fired those shots? Police? A suspect? Where's the who? Again, we don't have a who in this sentence because the sentence does not say. So we know this sentence is passive voice. So if you see that sentence in a press release, your first question to police right then should be, who fired the shots? Remember, who did what? Now, if police don't know who fired the shots, we should say, police say someone fired shots, who does what, but didn't tell us who. That is an active sentence. This is why active voice is so important in journalism, in what we do every day, because the phrase police fired shots is a much different story than a suspect fired shots. But the passive sentence, shots were fired, doesn't tell us the information. It doesn't give us the full story. So as you can hopefully see by now, active voice gives us more information and more transparency. Those are two great missions for journalists. Not to mention, active voice sentences are just more clear, concise, and direct than passive voice. Who does what is simpler and easier to understand than something is done. So how can you tell if a sentence is active or passive? Again, I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. Always go back to who does what. If the sentence answers the question, who does what, it's likely in active voice. So how do you tell if a sentence is in passive voice? Always look for the who. If the sentence doesn't pass the who does what test and you can't find a who in the sentence, it's probably in passive voice. It's also probably passive if you spot the word by in the sentence, or you can add the phrase by someone or by whom at the end of the sentence. I'll show you some examples of that in a moment. And finally, and this is a bit more of a grammar thing, if you see is, are, was, were, be, being, or been, those are called to be verbs, and it's usually a good sign that if you see one of those combined with all these other clues, it's a passive sentence. Let's try a few more examples. Litter can be seen throughout the area. Active or passive? Who does what? Who can see the litter? Well, we don't know because it doesn't say who can see the litter, so it's probably passive. Let's double check though. Let's try adding by neighbors to the sentence. Litter can be seen throughout the area by neighbors. Yeah, that works. So that's another sign it's a passive sentence. And take a look right there. There's one of those to be verbs, be, right there in the sentence. All signs that this is a passive sentence. So how would you transform this sentence to active voice? Who does what? You need to ask, who can see the litter? Now, using the example up here, let's say it is neighbors. Who does what? Neighbors see the litter throughout the area. Let's try another one. More police patrols are needed. Who does what? Who needs more police patrols? Well, guess what? The sentence does not say, so it's probably passive, but let's double check by adding, let's say, by homeowners on Main Street to the sentence. More police patrols are needed by homeowners on Main Street. All right, that's another sign it's passive. And right there again, there's the word are. That's another to be verb. So all this tells you this is a passive sentence. How would you transform this sentence, more police patrols are needed, into an active sentence? First, you have to ask the question, who? Who needs more police patrols? Let's say you find out it is homeowners on Main Street. Then who does what? Homeowners on Main Street need more police patrols. All right, one more. This is one of my favorites. Mistakes were made. Who does what? Who made a mistake? Well, guess what? The sentence doesn't say, so it's probably passive. Let's try adding by the mayor at the end. Yeah, that works. Mistakes were made by the mayor. Another sign this is a passive voice sentence. Then there's that to be verb up there, were. So this is a passive sentence. How do we make it active? Who made the mistakes? Was it the mayor? If so, who did what? The mayor made mistakes. You see how passive voice hides that important information that gets revealed in active voice? That's why this is so important. Now, we talked about police and press releases before, but I think this is such an important point I want to emphasize it again. Press releases are often written in passive voice, especially when an agency doesn't know, or worse, wants to hide who does what. As journalists, our job is to ask questions to people and agencies in power. And when we don't, a lot of that passive voice then ends up in our own stories and on our newscasts. It's not conversational, it's not clear, concise, or direct, and worse, it hides information. Now, you're looking at a press release from February 2024 from the Fayetteville, North Carolina Police Department that says there was an officer-involved shooting. And by the way, whenever you see that phrase, officer-involved shooting, in a press release, you need to start asking some questions. You need to find out, did an officer shoot at someone, or did someone shoot at an officer, or both? Who shot whom? Now, if you scan through this press release, you'll find that passive voice phrase that we see all the time, shots were fired. Now, as a journalist who knows active voice, you now know to ask and make clear who fired the shots. Okay, that was a lot. Don't worry if you're still getting the hang of this. With more practice, I promise this will become second nature. And soon, when you get a press release, your first instinct will be to ask, who did what? Scan this QR code and save my contact information. Reach out to me if you have any questions about this. And thanks for watching.